Okay, Twitch and Periscope work. Oh, YouTube says online now. Good. I still can't see anything on YouTube.
Me and other regions. Huh.
But on Restream it says online this time, and before it did not. So I thought that would be good.
What is it when it's on Twitter?
Like, how do I even go look at it? I don't know.
No, but I mean, is it like a... We're so old. Is it... If it's on Twitter right now, it looks like it is. Is it coming through Twitch, or is it just doing its own thing?
It's its
All
own
right,
thing.
Natalie, someone has joined.
Joined what?
Us. Hello, Natalie ZXV.
I don't even know what you're looking at.
This. I don't know if that's even something you can see.
I can't.
There's a delay. So it's kind of live but delayed because I'm hearing what I just said. Crazy. All right.
Just have a couple seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're live on YouTube. God.
Holy shit. It still doesn't show for me, but if you say so,
I say so.
dawdling over. Do this crap.
Never. Never. Okay.
All right, face is live. Here we go.
Well, yeah, here we go. Hold on. Are we live now, the faces? Because
Yeah.
I got to like turn on. I think I got to turn on a light because it suddenly got dark. Even though it's 2 more days until the longest day of the year. Right? 2 more days? 20. 1 more day? I'll be right
Keep
back,
track
folks.
of this stuff.
Say something, Heartland.
I wasn't paid to vamp. I am not prepared. A deer in the headlights. Oh, now it's all orangey pink.
What did you say?
You'll find out when you watch the video.
I
It was
never.
brilliant.
All right. Take us out.
Take us out? We're done? That's it?
No, I mean like engage.
Yeah, let's talk about modes of inquiry.
What are modes of inquiry? This is ridiculous.
Oh, we'll get there. It's going to become ridiculous. We already talked about this once on the Dawdler's Philosophy Podcast, episode number 3, which I believe we entitled Triamond Joy.
Yeah.
And this was one of those fancy schmancy original ideas rather than talking about someone else's idea. And I think it's Ryan's fault initially.
I'm
Ryan. Do you remember, like, what was the original motivation? Inspiration?
It had something to do with probably started, I think, as I recall from re-listening a little bit to the first episode, what I had recalled then, which I do not now. So I'm recalling a recall. Is that I was thinking about Dawkins and Richard Dawkins, evolutionary biologist, and how he sort of is really into the truth, and he seems like a truth seeker. In that he's trying to winnow his way closer to reality or whatever. He seems much more on that, bent in that way. At the same time, I also remember the word truth seeker. I know it had been used before, but it was when I was in my bachelor's, it was co-opted by intelligent design people, which I know that feels like ages ago now, but they would have like a little booth at the college or whatever university, and then they'd just be like, they called themselves truth seekers, and they had their own little cable access TV show, and they would talk about evolution and stuff, but of course they were, religious, and their real motivations were plain, because they'd always make a nosedive towards like, and God and Jesus and blah 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 at the end, and so they were all into that type of stuff. But the truth seeking mode was something that I thought about, because we had talked about it with respect to, I think, primarily my motivation, my primary angle on it was that I thought people seemed to be overconfident about what they thought was going on or whatever. And this did come down to some of my like professors and stuff like that. Part of that had to do with just the interdisciplinary nature of what it was that I was interested in. But also some of it came down to just, I think, bravado. And anyway, so Dawkins seemed to have plenty of that bravado, while at the same time I liked him, but I also was like, like you're just super into truth seeking. And then I thought about myself, and I was like, well, what is it that I'm into if I'm not Mr. Truth Seeking, if I don't spend my time doing that? And I thought, well, maybe I'm kind of like I thought about games, because I was reading this book by David P. Cars or James P. Cars. James, thank God. I said it right the first time, then I've said it wrong, and now I've said it both ways. Anyway, he's a professor emeritus, I think, of religion, sort of a philosopher of religion or whatever. And he was invited to some conference where the focus was game theory. And he didn't know what to do, because everybody's doing all this math, and he's like, I'm a fucking humanities guy, and so he ended up just still being inspired by the conversations that were happening. And he wrote this little book that I love. It's kind of vague and ambiguous, but I like it anyway, called Finite and Infinite Games. It's a great book. Check it out. I just thought, well, maybe I like that. And that seems to me like a lot of the stuff that he seemed to be pointing towards in that book, to me, made me think, well, maybe another kind of mode of operation or inquiry or whatever is game playing. And then I thought about you, Harlan, and I was like, well, he's not a game player in the same way, or he doesn't play games in the same way. He's more about the rules. Like, what are the rules of this game? The kind of thing. He's an umpire. He's a referee. He's blowing the whistle. He's throwing the flag, And I thought, well, overseeing was this idea. There's oversight. We can't just let the players decide, what happens. Because I think when you're playing a game, or when you're seeking the truth, or everybody has their side of the story, I was thinking that it's like kids being like, no, it wasn't over the line. Yes, it was, that kind of thing. And you need an arbiter of some kind. And so that was where this original 3 came from: the truth seeking, the engineering. Oh, shit. Truth seeking, game playing, and overseeing. Anyway, is now a good time to throw up that little geometry?
Are you ready for this?
I don't know. Whatever. Just put it up there, I guess.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay. So that was the thing that I thought of, or that was the picture in my head when I thought about these things in terms of like just their relationships with each other. They're all kind of, they relate to each other in the combinatorial ways that they do. And I thought in that triangle, there are these, at least in science, and especially in geology and whatnot, when I was getting my education, there are these things called tertiary diagrams. And it's like basically like bringing 2 axes together, because you're basically plotting across 3 dimensions in a particular way, so that it looks like it's a nice visual display of information. And, I thought, well, in a tertiary diagram, you're somewhere closer to here or over here or whatever. And so I thought this is sort of like a tertiary diagram. It's like, well, I think of not game player, but game playing. It's an activity, it's a mode of inquiry. And so you may not do all of them all at the same time. You may, you know what I mean? So I thought, well, maybe some people are kind of somewhere, in between, there's on, not necessarily on the line, but somewhere within that triangle, they're close to game playing a certain amount and close to truth seeking a certain amount and then close to overseeing a certain amount. Some might be closer to overseeing than the other two, or closer to overseeing and game playing than to truth seeking, that kind of thing. Anyway, so that's sort of the beginning of it, if I can recall it at all well. Yeah.
I suppose you won't be able to recall, but can you recall what it was about Dawkins, or what you were picking up on, that made you classify, not only classify him as a truth seeker, but he helped you design the category?
Yeah, I guess it might have been his dogmatism. At least it seemed to me like, if it wasn't dogmatism, if I would be charitable to, I know the world around me is happening. But if I was to be charitable, which I tend to be, maybe it was just, I don't know if this is a word, but stridence. He seems strident, super sure of himself. And I guess that's sort of like, he's like, I know it's the truth, or I'm getting close to it, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, there are fixed points in the universe, and this is how we arrive, at these fixed points. So, and that's through science. And so I guess I was thinking about it in that way. I don't necessarily think about it that way now. I can be in that way sometimes, but I don't as much now. I don't even know what I think at this point. I'm still looking for a place to land, because I created a fourth mode, which Harland has. We at least have a history of you being like, fourth mode, this is bullshit.
What is truth?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. All right.
Well, we've talked about this before. There's different things, like there's a correspondence theory of truth, right?
For the purposes of the modes of inquiry diagram.
Oh.
What is a truth seeker doing?
See how easily I slip away? Well, they're trying to essentially, this is where I came up with this is where I'm saying the phrase fixed points. This is where it comes from. With the idea of truth being, I guess it's an assumption that there is a point upon which the buck stops, and that we are effectively measuring our distance from it. I don't know if that, and so the truth is the characterization of that proximity or what have you, in this way of talking about it, yeah. Truth to me, truth seeking, it's this very much I don't know. I want to say destination, but then I think, well, a game, you could be playing it and the destination is the end to see who wins. So that's not right. But it's something like that. That's where the fixed points comes into play. Is that there's an ultimate, I guess, destination. I guess that's where I was thinking when it comes to truth, and truth being our characterization of that ultimate end with respect to, an event occurs and you say, yes, I saw that guy pull out a cell phone and not a shot, or whatever. Like, it's the truth, like I saw events as they actually occurred or whatever. You're making faces.
Well, yeah, you're coming around here at the end to more along the lines of how I would define it. But your initial definition to me sounded like a very gameplay-y description.
Oh.
And that you're such the game player that you won't even give the truth seekers what they want, even if you would ultimately argue that they can't get there. But what about if I say it this way? Truth seekers think, one, there is a way the world is, or reality is, or something. There's an objective fact of the matter about that which they are inquiring about.
Mm-hmm.
And to seek the truth is to attempt to discover, grasp, codify, access somehow facts about the way the world is. To find the truth. The way that we do it as human beings typically means to construct some formulas of some language or other, and then bestow upon those formulas the semantic property that we call truth, and that means that's the correspondence thing, that it accurately describes the state of reality.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, giving them their due. they're touching reality, and I want to say their characterization of that touch or that contact is the truth, right? Truth is about reality, right?
Yeah.
It's not reality. I mean, it is insofar as you communicate, I suppose, but in terms of it's an arrow pointing at the thing itself or whatever.
The way I think about it, and I think the truth seekers should be comfortable with this, is that truth is a property that only applies to language, and that the world is what we call a truth maker. That's what distinguishes true sentences from false sentences.
Okay. I've never thought about it in that way, that the world is a truth maker.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Okay, so that's your first question. What is truth?
And I suppose I also want to ask, what is inquiry? If what these 3 or 4 classifications that we're developing is modes of inquiry, what is that?
Well, I mean, I suppose I could just look it up on Google what a definition is of inquiry. But I think of I tend towards the word investigation, but I have given up that in terms of it, because for a while there I was calling it modes of investigation and modes of inquiry. So and I guess it is a looking into a problem or whatever, there's something that has I've been using this word a lot, so I apologize, but something is salient to us, and we then go and examine it, right? And we can do it in different ways with different approaches, one of which is we can approach it as, we're trying to figure out the truth, right? And another one could be another way. Hold on a second. Yes.
Are any devices that don't need to be on are
A couple of possible ways to...
Yes.
You got the kids, and I've got attempting to do production for this thing, and we're both distracted in different ways. All right, so an inquiry could be simply defined as an attempt to answer a question. and you could ask what those are. Or it could be something a little bit more vague, like attempting to resolve some cognitive dissonance or something. That there's not necessarily a pre-formulated question, but there's just some kind of chimp-level urge that we have that causes or motivates this seeking behavior, or it doesn't have to be seeking truth, but what, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to just go with something as simple as answering questions, because coming up with questions itself can be part of these activities, it seems.
Darn tootin'.
But anyway, that's what this is about. Whatever inquiry is, in that vague sense, these are ways to go about it, or orientations of the inquirer that they might go about attempting to answer their questions by trying to seek the truth, or by more like, oh well, I'm kind of just playing this game. There might be reasons to play this game or not, or it might be aesthetic enjoyment, who knows what, but more like playing a game. Or it could be this more overseeing activity, which is in a sense the hardest one to describe. But a sort of outlaw, we don't even really know what we're looking for, because we don't think you can necessarily get at the truth, or the truth is only one among many options. And we don't really have game rules, because we're able to go meta above those and look at the rules themselves and try to examine, is that a good rule, or would there be a better one? So there's no defined aims or rules, and yet you still are trying to come up with something.
Well, I think it's like in these different modes are essentially applying maybe a different system to whatever the problem is, whatever it is that has come to your attention. And that's kind of what I was always thinking, I guess, to some extent, was something has come to your attention and you have a various type of system that you tend to, or almost like a methodological approach to attacking it, And it's I almost feel like you could have said, like, I could have said perspectives on inquiry or something, you know what I mean? Like, but I didn't. So, yeah.
All right. What do you want to talk about next? Where do you want to go?
Well, did we? Well, okay. Do you want to do game playing or overseeing, or do you want to just? How do you want to? Or do you want to just move to the diamond?
Wherever you guide us.
Okay.
Blaze a
So
trail.
did we talk about game playing and overseeing at all? We've talked about truth seeking, and we talked a general thing about inquiry, but you kind of go through that kind of roughly. I have a particular way of. Hold on a second. Yeah. I'm live here on the world stage, and you've got questions. Okay, he's telling me to be quiet. No, I'm not. So anyway, I guess maybe I could just jump to this other formulation and kick in the whole engineering thing.
Okay.
And then we can discuss whether or not we like this other formulation. Or if you have things you want to, whatever, we'll just do it, right? Okay. Is it up?
Yeah.
Shit. Let me, okay. So I kind of want to look at it myself. So I'm going to do that. Okay. All right. So now I added a fourth one, and I've been trying to figure out ways to make it make sense. Because truth seeking had its system that it applied to problems. And game playing kind of is sort of screwing around by comparison to truth seeking, which is really kind of isn't an ultimate, whereas game playing is kind of more an approximate position, screwing around with whatever. And then overseeing, I always thought it was just a way to kind of look at game playing and truth seeking to see if there's any boundaries that are being crossed based on, the actual activities of playing a game or seeking the truth. Anyway, and then I thought of engineering, because to me, the overseeing and game playing seemed to have a nice back and forth in terms of, the referee player kind of role. And truth seeking and engineering I needed something on the other side of truth seeking. I didn't need it, but I thought about it because this one doesn't have as good an explanation for its origin. But let me put it to you this way. Here's another formulation for engineering. And I have sort of quasi definitions, but it's really more like thinking about them in terms of activities or exercises or something like that. So engineering is, I guess, let's talk about like the word model and sort of it being a very broad stroke word to apply to kind of any, formulation or construction. I don't have a good definition of model other than we tend to use it. I'm not going to try and do family resemblance here, but I guess I sort of am. We tend to use it as like, well, we have a verbal model, or we have a mathematical model, or we have an actual physical model, a scale model or something like that. But I think the idea of model can be applied even more broadly than that. So thinking about it in terms of that, these are sort of activities around models in a way. So engineering is model creation, like a model creation activity. And game playing then is like model exploration. And truth seeking then would be model validation. And overseeing is then more like model, what did I say? I think it was selection. Let me take a look. I've got it somewhere in here. Anyway, that was the basic thing that I was that's the sort of newish formulation for how these things are done. Okay, I have it. So what was it? Yeah, oh no. Okay, the last one was model justification for overseeing. And so an example I thought was like hypotheses in science or something like that. So engineering is generating a hypothesis. I mean, literally you're just taking stuff and you're putting it together because there's an issue or whatever. You're just trying to figure something out. You're just making stuff. Game playing then is like the example for model exploration would be hypothesis elaboration, which is a rare thing that people, I don't think, talk about a whole lot. They talk about other things than hypotheses with respect to hypotheses, but they don't often talk about hypothesis elaboration, which is basically trying to see, how far out this, what its various types of applications could be without actually trying to go and collect information about the world. And anyway, and then truth seeking as a model validation activity, the example could be hypothesis testing. We are literally going and even if it's just, even if one could explain it as being, hey, all you're doing is taking one model and another, and you're just comparing them, you're at least something is independent of your model that you are comparing it to or testing it against. So in science, we often talk about data, and we have like a mathematical model or a statistical model that we're using. So I know this is very heavy driven towards, science and whatnot. But then the overseeing one for model justification activity would be hypothesis selection. And so that would be like, multiple working hypotheses, like that one episode I don't remember what number it is, but there's an episode there. And I just don't remember. The final induction, I think, is what it's called. Anyway, and that one could be just saying to the person who's validated it, whether, the model in some way, it's a way to say like, yeah, okay, this worked against the data, but I have all these other models, and I'm going to do what you did with all these other models. And hey, look, this model does just as well, if not better than yours. It's like, so it's a way of kind of, it's an aspect of control on the whole, type of inquiry. And again, one does not necessarily do just say oversee things or just engineer. They may tend towards doing those things more often. But in general, that's kind of the way that I think about it. So here's an example, sticking within the science realm. An engineer would be Freeman Dyson. Like the thing that made him famous was that there was some quantum electrodynamics problems that Richard Feynman had been mulling over, and in a way he'd kind of worked out some of the stuff, but what they really wanted was a way to flesh it out with mathematics. And so Freeman Dyson then has this big elaborate story about being on a bus, and then it all came to him and he put all the pieces together. And so he was able to create the quantum electrodynamics equations. And that to me is kind of like like a model creation exercise where people kind of have a vague sense of what's going on, but an engineer is like literally putting pieces together, So anyway, that's just if we needed an example. I don't have examples because that just came to me. So I don't have examples for everybody else, but maybe like Richard Feynman would be more in the game playing mode, tending to be emphasizing truth seeking, and Harland might be tending to emphasize overseeing or something. So that was the sort of newish formulation that I put together the other day. Anyway,
right, like,
and that in some ways, yeah, good.
That those are all, if you take the concept of model and then say, well, how would these 4 different orientations on the diamond interact with that concept? Or what sounds to me like would probably be a good idea is if any one individual who was working with some scientific model spent some of their time engaging with it in each of those ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would be ideal. But I think what we have today in the world, if we're sticking with science, is a specialist versus generalist way of doing it. So maybe someone like an artist would be all those things. If their mode of inquiry is centered around expressing how they feel about some, political government trauma or whatever, and they created this huge mural, and they were the ones who kind of put things together, and they were also the ones who kind of explored sort of how they wanted to make it work, and then maybe they were able to kind of create a smaller version before they actually exercised it on a larger scale or something like that. And then ultimately, maybe as they're looking at the process, they go, no, I don't like the way this is turning out, or the way this is turning out, and the light's not hitting it the way, whatever. I don't know, maybe something like that could happen. If we could say art is a form of inquiry, but, I don't know. It's still all super loose for me right now. There's not been this solidification, this hardening of the modes of inquiry for me yet.
Is that something you desire?
I don't know. I think sometimes I desire it when we say it, and we want, if anyone who cares to listen to us, when we say, game playing and overseeing and stuff, that's something that I want, I want it to be a little more than just super vague or anything. You know what I mean? You want it to have some characteristics that, a person can work with when they're thinking if one of us says it.
Right.
But I don't know.
Is there anything particular you had in mind when you wanted to revisit it, or not really? Nothing in specific.
Nothing specific. It's just it's an important thing to you and me, and we mention it enough in various
Right, on the
episodes.
podcast we talk about it constantly.
Yeah. So I think that it's worth revisiting. We kind of did that with the first part of the Rority episodes, right? The first one. And we used it as a way to talk about kind of his maneuver, but I just kind of want to keep reiterating it.
Yeah.
It's like some philosophers. There's one. This is one off the top of my head, but Samir Okasha is a philosopher of science. It's in England that he does his teaching and research. I don't know if it's Cambridge or Oxford or neither. But he talks about, he did this whole book. He wrote a whole book on the levels of selection. And he talked a lot about, at one point, there's these two modes of the multi-level selection theory, MLS1 and MLS2. And I kind of want to say we have like a MOI1 and an MOI2, and the MOI1 is this triangle, and then the MOI2 is this, diamond. And I don't know. It's still incubating for some reason. For me.
Yeah, and I'm still happy with just the 3. I wonder, and the way that you brought it up tonight when you talked about it, it sounds like the reason engineering exists, and there became a 4th class, and there became a diamond, is an artifact of just the way that you think and do things, and that you want to have these diagrams, and you're like, put up this image or whatever, and that you think in more of these pictures, and you even said, well, I needed to have something down there because you can go this way and they flop over on each other, but then truth-seeking didn't have anything. And it's just so different from the way that I approach anything, that in itself is interesting to me. And that is the sort of modes of model construction. Like there's something going on there. It's not really, it doesn't fit in this really, because nobody thinks this is true or false. It's just some random thing that's kind of fun or useful. And
yeah, no, for sure.
I don't really even know that it's a game activity. But I don't know. It's weird and interesting that you, from, I think, just looking at the picture or thinking about it in this triangular way, motivated you to want a 4th one. That's weird to me, who doesn't do that kind of thing.
Well, and it's very intra-specific to me, probably, because I talked about, I guess I tend to be towards more game playing, and I talked about how it's model exploration, or you could talk about hypothesis elaboration, and that to me seems like that. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to push it out a little bit more in this one direction and see, what it looks like, and now I'm going to try and make it work, or whatever. Like, I may one day abandon it and join you in the 3 only, but right now I'm still out here, just like, yeah.
But if you for some reason preferred stars, you could come up with 2 more or 1 more. You could.
I suppose. Yeah.
I don't know if your response to that was like, God, that was annoying, or, oh my God, he's right, I need to come up with another one.
It might be the latter, because now I'm all like, well, what would that look like? But I won't do it. I won't. I just, No, I like the symmetry. I don't know. Fucking Jesus Christ. So, do you want to? I almost want to let you have the floor on what your take on the 3 is, and then we can sign out or whatever. Because I think we've done this, for long enough.
Okay.
But I want your take to happen on this matter so that it's somewhere.
My general take as of this instant, unprepared, is that
You hate that.
What? No, it's fun and it's a good challenge.
No, I know, but yeah, okay.
I like the idea, and again, for me, it was originally in this triangular formulation with overseeing, gameplay, and truth-seeking, and I liked that. To me, engineering doesn't sound like a mode of inquiry because, again, I get hung up on these things like, okay, well, we got to define our terms, and what does inquiry mean? And designing and building bridges or whatever doesn't sound obviously to be the same as I say weight class or whatever as these other 3. So I don't know. But I like engineering. I'm not anti-engineering. I'm just saying I wouldn't necessarily include it in this. And I like it, I guess, because it is an obviously instrumental high-level abstraction tool that just can help facilitate, in part, conversation and interpretation. So if I'm engaging with a text, including listening to someone on a podcast, whatever, I can think about what a person is saying, the positions they're taking, the claims they're making. I can use this as a crutch in my attempt to interpret them. Well, what are they doing? Or why would they say that? Or, oh, I get it. Now it makes sense. This guy's a truth seeker. And what he thinks he's doing is blah, 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 blah. It lets me do that. And that's helpful internally. And then when talking to someone else, or when sending, oh yeah, check this article out, you can just throw that in real quick. Other people who do happen to know about this terminology. Like, oh, this guy's really playing the SJW game, or the IDW game, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this is such a truth seeker. What it helps brackets over unbrackets simplify things. Maybe it can be done to the negative, but it can also be helpful and useful. And these 3, again, depending on the degree of injustice you want to do to people, can be exhaustive. You can take all human inquiry and classify it generally as one of those 3 things. And you've done a fair enough job of mutually exclusively and exhaustively categorizing human inquiry. Of course, it's totally just, again, useful fiction. It doesn't mean anything, but it's sometimes somewhat useful and fun at the same time. I think that was my take before, and it still basically is. I haven't spent much time thinking actively about this little pseudo model or whatever it is, and more just using it, because I thought, hey, this is good enough. I think I understand it. I think it's useful, and I just started throwing it around. So I haven't really elaborated upon it more than back at episode 3, or added to it or done anything with it other than just used it.
Yeah, that's all good. I'm down with it. I mean, in terms of using it in that way, I just can't help myself. I guess gotta work it harder.
Yeah.
Where's the other mode? Yeah. So next time when we talk about it, there'll be like 15 modes.
Oh,
you'll be like, baby. Got my work cut out for me. All right. Well,
All right, I guess
What
we're
do you
getting
say?
out of here, huh?
yeah, we can get out of here. I don't think we have to carry this on for too much longer. People have their Netflix to watch.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
we
I
don't.
have my, yeah.
We made it another session without having any questions to answer or anything, so we'll do that
Oh, hint, hint, folks. Hint, hint.
when
Although I
our
can't see the question.
0.0 listeners become one. Well, anyway,
Well,
all right.
hold on. Let me actually, yeah, hold on. Let me just one. Yeah, okay. All right. Oh, I was gonna take a look at least Twitter's it's got one listener now, but it had 5 at one point, and I lost them
Jesus.
at the.
All right, we'll talk to you all
All right.
later.